My CEO fired me without severance to hire his nephew, so I held his $250,000 lunch hostage for $50,000. I was staring blankly at the cardboard box in my hands when my now former CEO leaned across his mahogany desk, smirked, and told me to be grateful he even let me work there for 5 years. He had just fired me to replace me with his crypto bro nephew, stealing my 20 grand in accrued severance, completely unaware that he had just handed the keys to his entire company directly to the man he was currently screwing over. The smell of stale coffee, burnt ozone, and cheap carpet at 812 Foundry Way Suite 404 is permanently burned into my olfactory memory. 5 years ago, SwiftCart wasn't a high-velocity e-commerce juggernaut pulling in millions. It was 3 guys in a drafty loft, eating dollar store ramen, trying to figure out how to make a dropshipping API communicate with a clunky front-end interface. I was the founding system administrator. I built the entire network architecture from the ground up, splicing Ethernet cables by hand because Marcus, our CEO, refused to approve a budget for pre-made links. Marcus was notoriously, pathologically cheap. He viewed IT as a necessary evil, a black hole where money vanished, rather than the literal backbone of his digital storefront. The origin of my ultimate leverage started exactly 58 months ago. We were days away from our alpha launch, and Marcus had completely forgotten to secure the domain name. The company bank account was overdrawn by $300. We had nothing. I sat in a broken office chair, shivering because the heating unit had died, and told Marcus we needed $15 to register SwiftCart.com on GoDaddy. Marcus laughed, waved his hand dismissively, and told me to put it on my personal debit card. He promised he would reimburse me on Monday. I bought the domain using my personal GoDaddy account, linking it to my private email and my own Visa card. Monday came and went. I submitted an official expense report for $15. It was denied by Marcus with a note saying non-essential. Over the next 4 years, as the company exploded in revenue, I submitted exactly 12 reimbursement requests for that domain and its annual renewal fees. 12 times, I was ignored or rejected. The breaking point for that specific argument came in 2021. I brought it up in our #general Slack channel, asking for the accumulated $45. Marcus, annoyed by the public ping, sent me a direct message that I instantly screenshotted and archived in 3 separate offline locations. "It's your account, your problem," he typed. "Just keep the site up. Stop bothering me about pocket change." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach that day, a quiet realization that loyalty meant absolutely nothing to this man. I stopped asking. I kept the site up. I paid the annual fee out of my own pocket, year after year, letting the domain sit safely in my private registry, completely detached from SwiftCart's corporate assets. By last Friday, SwiftCart had outgrown the Foundry Way loft. We were in a sleek downtown high-rise. I was exhausted, burned out, carrying the weight of a massive infrastructure on my shoulders. I was pulling 60-hour weeks to prepare for Marcus's magnum opus, the global launch. He had secured a new round of venture capital and dumped $250,000 into influencer partnerships, Instagram ads, and TikTok campaigns, all programmed to go live simultaneously at 8 p.m. on Saturday. The traffic spike was going to be biblical. Every single ad, every single link, pointed directly to SwiftCart.com. At 3 p.m. on Friday, Marcus's assistant pinged me to come to the glass-walled corner office. When I walked in, Marcus was sitting behind his desk, wearing a tailored Italian suit that cost more than my car. Standing next to him was a kid who looked no older than 22, wearing a graphic tee featuring a pixelated ape and a gold chain. "Henry, sit," Marcus commanded, not looking up from his MacBook. I didn't sit. I felt the ambient temperature in the room drop. "What's going on, Marcus?" "We have the migration prep for tomorrow's launch in an hour. We're making a strategic pivot," Marcus said smoothly, finally looking at me. His eyes were dead, devoid of a single ounce of empathy. "The board feels our current infrastructure is archaic. We need Web3 integration. We need blockchain scalability. We're bringing in a new chief technology officer." He gestured vaguely to the kid. "This is Chad, my nephew. He's a crypto visionary." Chad gave me a half-hearted peace sign. "Sup, man. Yeah, we're gonna decentralize the whole cloud stack. It's gonna be sick." Main issue is that Chad didn't know the difference between a decentralized ledger and a hole in the ground. 2 weeks prior, he had visited the office and asked me how to download more RAM for his gaming laptop. "You're firing me," I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The day before the biggest traffic surge in company history. "Your services are no longer required, effective immediately," Marcus replied, sliding a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a termination notice. No severance package was attached. "I have 5 weeks of accrued PTO," I said, my voice dropping an octave, shaking with a rage I was desperately trying to suppress. "And my contract outlines a 3-month severance if terminated without cause." "That's $20,000, Marcus." Marcus let out a short, breathy laugh. He stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Read the fine print, Henry. You're being terminated for failure to align with company vision. That's a termination for cause. You get nothing. Pack your desk. Security will escort you out in 15 minutes. Be grateful you had a job this long. I stared at him. I looked at Chad, who was already tapping away on a shiny new iPad, completely oblivious to the man whose life was being upended in front of him. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the edge of the mahogany desk. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the desk over and shatter the glass walls. But I didn't. The white-hot anger suddenly crystallized into something entirely different. A cold, pristine, absolute clarity washed over me. Understood, I whispered. I turned around, walked to my desk, and packed my personal mechanical keyboard, my coffee mug, and a framed picture of my dog into a cardboard box. The security guard, a guy named Frank who I used to play fantasy football with, stood awkwardly by the elevator. I handed him my keycard, walked out of the building, and sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, listening to the silence, breathing in and out. That's when the real bombshell dropped. I hadn't even pulled out of the parking garage when my phone vibrated violently against the center console. It was a text from Sarah, one of the junior backend developers I had trained myself. The text read, "Henry, what did you do? Chad just logged into AWS to optimize the servers. I threw the car into park. What is he doing?" I texted back. "He said the EC2 instances looked cluttered," Sarah replied. "He ran a termination script. He deleted the primary production database. Henry, he didn't uncheck the cascade delete box. The off-site S3 backups are gone. Everything is gone. The site is throwing a 503 fatal error." I stared at my phone screen until the backlight timed out. Chad, the crypto visionary, had managed to completely wipe 5 years of corporate data, customer profiles, inventory logs, and payment gateways in less than 30 minutes. SwiftCart, as a digital entity, no longer existed on Amazon Web Services. There were no servers. There was no database. The only thing left of the entire multi-million-dollar company was the domain name routing itself. And that domain name was currently resting comfortably in my personal GoDaddy account, tied to my private debit card, legally owned by Henry, an unemployed man sitting in a Honda Civic. A slow, terrifying smile spread across my face. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp, bright sunshine that felt entirely disconnected from the digital slaughterhouse I was about to open. I made myself a pour-over coffee, savoring the rich aroma. I booted up my personal desktop at home. The clock read 9 a.m. Marcus's global launch, backed by $250,000 in non-refundable advertising, was scheduled for 8 p.m. I logged into GoDaddy. I bypassed the SwiftCart DNS settings, which were currently pointing to Chad's burning pile of deleted AWS ashes, and accessed the advanced routing tables. I didn't delete the site. I didn't hack anything. I committed no cyber crimes. I simply exercised my legal right as the private owner of a digital property to change my own DNS records. I pointed SwiftCart.com away from the company's servers and directed it to a private, secure server rack sitting in my own living room. Then, I opened my code editor. I didn't need a complex database or a sleek front-end framework. I just needed raw, brutal HTML and CSS. I spent 3 hours crafting the perfect, unblockable, uncacheable landing page. I coded a stark black background with bold, blood-red Helvetica text. In the center of the screen, I programmed a giant JavaScript clock, ticking down the milliseconds in real time. Beneath the clock, I added a massive, neon progress bar that pulsed ominously. The text above it was clean and professional. Company assets currently frozen due to unpaid debt. Below that, I itemized the bill for the entire internet to see. Total owed to legal owner of this domain, Henry. $20,000, stolen severance and accrued PTO. $15, domain registration fee, 2019. $30,000, emergency weekend IT urgency surcharge. Total required for release, $50,015. At the very bottom, in bright yellow hyperlinks, I added, click here to donate to the CEO's Nephew fund or contact SwiftCart Legal to restore functionality to this site. I saved the file, uploaded it to my server, and flushed the global DNS cache. By 2 p.m., anyone typing SwiftCart.com into their browser was greeted not by high-end sneakers or sleek streetwear, but by my live severance tracker. I spent the rest of the afternoon watching the analytics dashboard on my second monitor. Around 7:45 p.m., the traffic started to tick upward. First, a few hundred hits. Then, as 8 p.m. struck and Marcus's army of paid influencers hit publish on their Instagram stories and TikTok videos, the traffic graph spiked so hard it looked like a vertical cliff face. 100,000 hits, 500,000, 2 million, 10 million followers across 50 different influencer accounts were swiping up, clicking links, and expecting to buy limited edition shoes. Instead, they slammed face-first into a digital brick wall demanding a $50,000 ransom from a CEO who fired his IT guy. Twitter erupted. The hashtag SwiftCart hostage started trending within 45 minutes. People were taking screenshots of the ransom page and tagging Marcus's personal accounts. Influencers were posting panicked follow-up videos, apologizing to their fans, hands, confused about why they were being redirected to a debt collection tracker. At 8:12 p.m., my phone rang. The caller ID was Marcus. I let it ring. It rang again, and again. By the fourth call, he left a voicemail. I played it on speakerphone, recording it with a secondary microphone just in case. "Henry, you son of a bitch," Marcus screamed into the receiver, his voice cracking with a level of panic I had never heard from another human being. "I swear to God I will have you arrested. You hacked my company. You hacked the servers. Turn the site back on right now or I am calling the FBI. You are going to prison." I calmly opened my email, drafted a message to Marcus's personal address, and attached a single file. It was the screenshot of his Slack message from 2021. "It's your account, your problem. Just keep the site up. Stop bothering me about pocket change." I hit send. Then, I turned off my phone, ordered a pizza, and went to sleep like a baby. Sunday was absolute chaos, though I only experienced it through the second-hand updates from Sarah, who was live texting me from the war room Marcus had set up in the corporate boardroom. According to Sarah, Marcus had spent the entire morning screaming at GoDaddy customer support. He had elevated the call to their elite security and fraud division, reporting the domain as stolen by a disgruntled ex-employee. GoDaddy's security team pulled the records. I can only imagine the smug satisfaction of the Tier 3 support agent who had to explain the reality of the situation to a shrieking CEO. The domain had been registered to Henry. It was paid for with Henry's personal Visa card. It was tied to Henry's personal Gmail account. There was absolutely zero history of SwiftCart LLC ever owning, paying for, or registering the domain name. "Sir," the GoDaddy representative reportedly told Marcus, "we cannot transfer a private individual's digital property to a third-party corporation without a court order or the owner's explicit written consent. From our system's perspective, this company does not belong to you. It belongs to him." Marcus slammed the phone against the wall, shattering the screen. By noon on Sunday, the situation had escalated from a PR nightmare to an existential corporate crisis. The venture capital investors, the people who had just dumped millions into the company, saw the trending hashtag SwiftCart hostage hashtag. They saw the public humiliation. They saw their $250,000 ad spend evaporating into thin air, generating zero sales and infinite mockery. The lead investor called Marcus and delivered an ultimatum. If the site wasn't operational and generating revenue by 9 a.m. on Monday, they were pulling the remaining funding and initiating a hostile takeover of the board to oust Marcus for gross negligence. At 2 p.m., a courier knocked on my apartment door and handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside was a frantic, aggressively worded cease and desist letter from SwiftCart's corporate legal team, threatening me with lawsuits for digital sabotage, corporate espionage, and interference with prospective economic advantage. I didn't panic. I called my lawyer, a brilliant guy named David who specialized in tech litigation and contract law. I sent him the cease and desist, the Slack screenshot, my bank statements showing 5 years of GoDaddy payments, and my termination letter proving I was fired without severance. David called me back 20 minutes later. I could hear him chuckling over the phone. "Henry, they have absolutely nothing. They are bleeding out, and they know it. You didn't hack anything. You just stopped letting them use your property for free. So, what's the play?" I asked, looking at the live severance tracker on my monitor, which was currently sitting at 4.2 million unique page views. "I'm drafting our response right now," David said. "We are going to inform them that you are not committing sabotage. You are simply a private landlord who has decided to stop providing a free, 5-year digital lease to a corporate tenant. If they wish to resume renting your digital real estate, the new monthly rent is $50,000, payable immediately in advance. If they wish to purchase the property outright to end the lease, the fee is the exact same amount." David sent the response directly to Marcus and his legal team at 4 p.m. He attached the 2021 Slack message as Exhibit A. He explicitly stated that any further harassment would result in us going to the tech press, specifically the Virgin TechCrunch, with the full story of how a multi-million-dollar tech startup failed to pay a $15 domain fee and subsequently lost their entire infrastructure to a nepotism hire. Sunday night was a quiet, tense standoff. The clock on my landing page kept ticking. The influencers kept complaining. The investors kept breathing down Marcus's neck. I sat at my desk, drinking a cold beer, watching the progress bar on my custom HTML page remain at 0%. Monday morning broke gray and overcast. At exactly 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes before the investor's deadline, my phone chimed. It was an alert from my banking app. Incoming wire transfer, SwiftCart LLC. Amount, $50,015. I stared at the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. ribs. I refreshed the app. The balance sat there, bold and undeniable. Marcus had broken. He had gone to his corporate treasury, authorized the emergency wire, and paid every single cent of my stolen severance, the $15 domain fee, and the $30,000 urgency surcharge. My phone immediately rang. It was Marcus's lawyer. The funds have been wired. Transfer the domain now. It's a pleasure doing business with you, I said cheerfully, and hung up. I didn't stall. I am a professional, after all. I logged back into GoDaddy, unlocked the domain, and initiated the transfer to the corporate registrar account the lawyer had provided. Within 10 minutes, SwiftCart.com no longer belonged to me. I took down my landing page. I turned off my private server. I walked into my kitchen and made myself a massive plate of eggs and bacon, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for 5 years. By 9:30 a.m., SwiftCart.com was back under corporate control. But there was a massive, glaring problem that Marcus and his crypto-visionary nephew were about to discover. Transferring a domain name gives the new owner control over the routing, but it doesn't magically restore the AWS servers that Chad had permanently deleted on Friday afternoon. Chad was still staring at an empty cloud console, trying to figure out how to restore an entire e-commerce infrastructure from scratch with no backups. The website was back in their hands, but it routed to a blank, default AWS error page. Furthermore, during the domain transfer, I had forgotten to export and include the complex web of MX records, the mail exchange records that dictated how the company's email servers routed traffic. When the domain transferred, all the custom routing rules vanished. Sarah texted me around lunchtime on Monday. "Henry, it's a madhouse. Chad is literally crying in the server room. The website is still down because he doesn't know how to rebuild the database schema. And worse, the entire company's email system is broken. No one can send or receive external emails. Marcus is missing investor meetings because the calendar invites are bouncing. Chad asked me what an MX record is. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Tell Chad to check the blockchain," I texted back. I spent the rest of the week booking a 3-month vacation to Japan, using the $30,000 urgency surcharge to upgrade myself to first class. SwiftCart's website remained entirely offline for 6 full days while they hired expensive emergency contractors to rebuild the database from pieced-together cached files and old developer environments. Chad was quietly let go, or transitioned to an advisory role, as the corporate speak put it, by Thursday. Marcus barely survived the board vote, keeping his job only by surrendering a massive chunk of his equity to the furious investors. I sat in the airport lounge, sipping a complimentary bourbon, watching the planes take off against the sunset. I opened my bank app one more time just to look at the balance. $50,015. The exact price of loyalty, arrogance, and a profoundly cheap CEO. So, I have to ask, am I the monster here for holding an entire company hostage for a payout, or did a hyper-arrogant boss get exactly what he deserved for letting his ego blind him to the guy holding the keys to the castle?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.